And this deal that the administration has brokered to keep TikTok going, as far as I can tell, the algorithm, which is the heartbeat of the app, is going to remain under ByteDance's ownership. And ByteDance is a Chinese company. And the national security threat, the primary one, has been if more and more Americans are turning to TikTok for news, which they are, and if roughly half of Americans are on TikTok, which is also true, then you effectively have a situation where a foreign adversary, the most dangerous foreign adversary of America, controls what type of content is boosted and suppressed. It's the equivalent of giving the Soviet Union ownership over our broadcasting companies in the midst of the Cold War. We never would have done that, but we're doing it right now. And if we allow the algorithm to remain under ByteDance's ownership, then again, as far as I can tell right now, this new American joint venture will not have control of it. And if we don't have control of it, who does? It appears that the Chinese Communist Party will, which is not good.
So this is A, insane, and B, it is in violation of the law Congress passed that required TikTok to be banned or sold, right? I mean, or is this like somehow, is there some loophole that says, oh, it's fine as long as, you know, most of the money is made by American companies, even if the algorithm is like, how is this legal?
So let's first talk about how the law defines foreign adversary controlled applications or apps. The law says you'll basically be a foreign adversary controlled app if you are domiciled in China, or if you're an American company, if you have above 20% ownership of a foreign adversary, or if you are controlled by a foreign adversary. Those three metrics. The TikTok is not domiciled in China. ByteDance is, but TikTok is an American company. So it doesn't meet that first criteria. The second, under this deal, ByteDance's ownership of TikTok, as far as I can tell, would come below that 20% threshold. So perhaps you can make a case that it achieves that one. But on the issue of control, this is the sticking point. Because later on in the law, it says that there shall be no cooperation between ByteDance and TikTok on how the algorithm operates. And if you are licensing the algorithm from ByteDance, then you are still controlled by a foreign adversary, the way the law is written. However, there is one wrinkle. The part of the law that defines what a qualified divestiture is, which basically means TikTok and ByteDance need to separate, and this is the way that the law says you need to do it. The law defines a qualified divestiture as a deal that the president certifies. So the key legal question here is, even if on the merits this deal still leaves TikTok under the TikTok algorithm under ByteDance's ownership and control, if President Trump signs that executive order, which he did, saying this is a qualified divestiture, is that going to be sufficient to hold up in court? It could be. We'll have to see how this plays out. I also hasten to add, we actually haven't seen the details of the arrangement itself. We've seen the executive order. We haven't seen the deal, and it's a proprietary one, so I don't know if we actually ever will. So a lot of this is going to have to get litigated in court, but I will say that I am not encouraged by the way this is looking right now.
I mean, at a minimum, it keeps TikTok open to Americans instead of just being shut down.
And as it has been since mid-January, when theoretically the law should have gone into effect, but Trump extended it by 90 days and then extended it again by 90 days and then extended it again by 90 days. So it just keeps, he's just keeping this horrible monster alive.
Yes. And let's maybe just talk for a moment about the rule of law. This is a law that Congress duly passed overwhelmingly bipartisan fashion that the Supreme Court upheld it unanimously. The role of the executive in our system is to enforce the law. And the authority that President Trump has claimed for himself in those executive orders that you just mentioned is not constitutional. That is not how the American system of government works. That the president doesn't like a law, he or she does not have the luxury or the ability to simply ignore it and not enforce it. There is such a thing as like triaging and figuring out where we're going to prioritize resources. That's normal. This is totally different. It is willfully ignoring the law. And I think this matters not just as an American who loves the rule of law, but the system of the Chinese Communist Party is ruled by law. And this kind of goes back to that maybe tongue-in-cheek exchange we had at the very beginning of our conversation, which is if you ever find yourself doing something that the CCP would do, stop and do the opposite. By willfully ignoring the law, we aren't leaning into the best of what makes us Americans. We're leaning into something that is not natural in our own system. It looks like how the Chinese Communist Party interacts with law. So I think it should be this should be a moment where we need to keep the best of who we are in our system. And this whole TikTok saga hasn't done that.
Well, it really does expose how, like the CCP uses, like the United Front, to change how Americans think about the issues. I recently saw Tucker Carlson interviewed Megyn Kelly, and she was like, nobody under 30 trusts Israel. Most people under 30 are getting their news from TikTok, which, again, the algorithm is controlled by China, by ByteDance. And one of the defenses people were trying to make online about why we need TikTok is that TikTok is the only place you can hear the truth about Israel. And usually what Israel is being accused of is exactly what the Chinese Communist Party is doing, particularly the influence operations. So yeah, TikTok has become a great way to convince Americans that specifically China is not the threat, it's Israel to America.
And this is, let's step back here and take full stock of how that instance of United Front work functions. It is not just influencing Americans, it is splitting the American coalition, because the Chinese Communist Party is not acting in this Lone Ranger fashion. They are in concert with Moscow, Tehran, Pyongyang, and other nations as well, but primarily those, to challenge and to change the world that America has made. America is standing with Ukraine and Israel, and I hope with Taiwan, against this new access that is coming. So it is in China's interest to split our coalition and to create doubt and distrust among the American people of Israel, of Ukraine. And I don't think it's any accident that the day after October 7th in 2023, when Hamas barbarically attacked Israel, TikTok's algorithm in an insane way boosted pro-Palestinian and pro-Hamas content. And it was something that members of Congress noticed. And it was a huge motive for them to pass the law forcing TikTok to separate from ByteDance, because they saw the impact on young Americans in college campuses.
I do think that some of this TikTok stuff had gotten lost in the weeds about American data, like as if that was the main national security threat, is like what's happening with American data, which, I mean, that is concerning, but I think like the whole point about this being like a propaganda mechanism and the CCP seeing this as a propaganda mechanism because they have how they use TikTok and how they use ByteDance in China, and like the way that they're trying to spread propaganda now, it like that all got lost, I think, when talking about the dangers of TikTok.
Thank you for watching. A link to Michael's book, Countering China's Great Game, is below. And this clip was just one short highlight from our hour-plus long podcast. When you join our team at ChinaUncensored.tv, you'll be able to download the full podcast and get exclusive deep dive episodes. But more importantly, you'll be joining our team that's standing up to the CCP. Link is below.